Oh, yeah, you know. Hey, there he is. Okay, here's the $5 he showed.
Today's gathering is a good one.
Yes.
Yes.
Take that for you.
Yeah, the gathering.
He tries.
Yes.
I don't know if that translates.
It's
Just-
a helping of the glory of God, right?
Okay. I think it's live.
You
Begin with the Heart Sutra in English on page 2. Thus I have heard, at one time the Blessed One was dwelling before he descended to the Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the 5 skandhas and their natural entities. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should the son of a lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The 5 skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, positional factors, and consciousness are evident. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are born and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomenon. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on, no old age and death, and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no content. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom, and have become true and every Buddha's unsurpassable, perfect, and complete light. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, The mantra which calls all suffering to the oldest true is not dissentful. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is to play. Teata, Om Gate Gate, Paragate, Parasasante, Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva noble Avalokiteshvara that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you were taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One said this, the Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, demons, asuras, and gandharvas, rejoice and praise the words of the Blessed One. Mamadam Gampo Jesu Jabe Yama Jazepo Kange Lodre Dine Teta Neta Nanda Rasarave Jene Dunkuro Jeje Nije Tuka Lepase Kanda Sebe Surya Mari Meto Tumara Jezebe Roso Guna Buji Tatse Yana Tuju Yamde So Druda Chedo Nemo Nemo Leche Jado Doze Mare Mese Lune Lugu Chene Chente Radena Dene Tajin Sajyo Tasu Yede Luzo Jase Tuyo Jada Jada Jini Jende Talo Minze Jabe Yamazu Rabadana Di O Arabasana Di O Arabasana Di Jere Jero Zedi Talo Dimu Mambala Salame Kada Deju Julu Tobai Loryo Pobe Namo Talu. Continue the short mandala offering on page 16. Saji Guru
Joshe Medona Jera Nije Nike Gemale Sanje Jindo Mide Boai Dogo Nanta Jina Jira Shu Lame Namba Jena Je Jugo Kala Jibze Tujene Jeda Zambe Duje Zemana Zaje Juje Jabara Kena Medala Kande Adaya Jana Swaji Jana Janjo Pado Kani Jasaji Dagi Juje Jibe Sanaji Rala Benjure Sanje Nirvana Jana Swaji Jana Janjo Pado Kani Jasaji Dagi Juje Jibe Sanaji Rala Benjure Sanje Nirvana Jana Swaji Jana Janjo Pado Kani Jasaji Dagi Juje Jibe Sanaji Rala Benjure Sanje Nirvana Enda tenemos un show que yo me fantina Kagi Sinje Ma Denjo Tene Dune Nampanshi Unjo Tele Katsato Nene Dalu Sumate Meda Kula Sochi Peace Adava Mashoji Jana Katakore Kagi Sinje Ma Denjo 세대 비지 생기로 손을 말에 대대들이 많이요. 강기 쓰지 마된 줄 시간에 매다 그라 소지 베이스 다 받에 만드시로 쉬어야지. 좀
Well, next, verse 12 still. Therefore, in the cause of Jews, the victor taught a vow in Greek, through which, if you make an effort, you are often sentient beings. No.
다 강기 쓰지 마된 줄 세대 소 쇼그로면 된 거만 자주 생각하고 지마 어디 지니 소용구도 제가 자주 생각 강하게 아니 라네 집에 생제도 저 라네리아 메테바 차야기 진도 만도와지 제고 그래서 다 소소문이 강하다도 제고 그래 현다도 돼 라네를 마테바 주야 먼저와지 제고 그래 마테바 차야기 내 제소가 있나 그거 좀 그래서 정말
So this verse primarily mentioned about how the bodhisattva should behave. Bodhisattva should must behave, and their behaviors and their conduct should not be something that's, become a condition for disrespectful for other sentient beings when the ordinary beings look at the bodhisattvas. So it is primarily speaking about, it is how the bodhisattvas should behave when the bodhisattvas are interacting with the common societies, so that their actions or their conducts should not be something that is offensive, that force the other individuals to become disrespectful to the bodhisattvas.
왜냐 자주스 란데 자주스 배우잖아요. 아니 소소기 고송기 자와데 사사지 마송이나 라니기 고송기 자와지 단지를 때니 바로 라니를 마대바 주송이나 아니 바로 보데 마대바 주사데 자주스 많이 손상 안 그런 랭이 마시지 사도 그래서 근데 인도 랭이 맞들 때니 바로 보데 안 뭐발 되게 동에 시험만 그래서 근데 인도 고소가 저와 문제가 제게도 장주스 말에 들 메테바 중에도 바로 보지래 바로 보되게 마대바 주사를 장주스 많이 있어서 근데 레 자치모지 싸네 근데 동에 자치모를 맡기는 그래서
So the bodhisattvas, it says bodhisattvas must be very careful with their actions of the body, speech, and mind that doesn't become offensive to other common beings when the bodhisattva is interacting with the common society. So making sure their actions of the body, speech, and mind, especially the body and speech, something that doesn't become a cause or condition for generating disrespectful attitude for towards bodhisattvas. So therefore, if because of their behavior, if the common ordinary beings become disrespectful to the bodhisattvas, then the individual who actually become disrespectful towards bodhisattvas is actually accumulating a tremendous amount of negative actions. So that will result that individual to undergo sufferings tremendously. So it is therefore, even the bodhisattvas is advised be very careful with the actions of the body and speech when they are associating with common beings or the ordinary beings.
Then you do parable nipa dunge dibe dunge yunga tsama sebe jajus marani ni nipa yungo res kaina parable tende dibe chimbo saya de rani ki chenchi bara was rani ki kosong jawab mziba je chebar deni parable ge madiba juara was jazan parable madiba juya ge chen rani ki cheba yuso tan tende ane rani ni nipa yungo res.
So if whoever is the bodhisattva has become a cause for generating disrespect for somebody towards bodhisattvas, and suddenly that individual who become a disrespectful accumulate a tremendous amount of negative karma. Not only that, but also the bodhisattvas who becomes a cause for generating disrespectful also accumulate karmas. Tichazim sogel in your way, Tichazim sogel, na.
전 소지 인초래 소지 인초래야 저도 봐봐 인초래
How the less outside the na.
니모기 레사 사와요 말때 장시
Never
봐봐
karina, the day say which machine ya.
장시 봐봐 있네요 진니모기 그로 레사 사바도 요 말때 코랑기 고송이 저와 저래다 마그마주다 류기 찌쭈는 문제 같은데 틀이 바로 보 맞대봐 줘요구나
Tichazim koronla never.
그런 입어요구나 근데 바로 보 랭을 봤어야게 찐 그런 거 잡아라 근데 그런 입어요구나
Less avana, and lay nemasai.
랭을 봤어버려
Avoid.
용거래 다 그런 줄은 영어하게 랭을 봤어봐도 용거에 말아 이나 그런 게 고송 저 재단 직서 그래 마지막에 바로 보 telaya 마대반주 마대반주 하고 바로 보아데 랭귀지 사바라다 전시스만 마대반주 알아 근데 이제 되게 니바 대 레사 전시스만 되게 괜찮아 봐라 제지만 그런 니바 용거
Never did karina.
다 니바 요한데 그런 게 저기 또봐 아니 저봐야 제 나오면 그만 좀 와서야 승야기 그다기 다시 되는 용거
Also. So I was clarifying with Kishila. So what level of bodhisattva that we're talking about here is making sure that because we have ordinary bodhisattvas and superior bodhisattvas and so on. And I just asked Kishila which level of bodhisattva we're talking about here. It's even bodhisattvas who are on the first bhumi of the bodhisattvas will have this consequences if he or she become a cause for distress or becoming a cause for making someone disrespectful towards bodhisattvas. He accumulates some kind of karma, but that doesn't mean that karma is actually derived from negative thoughts and emotions. But there is some consequences that bodhisattvas must pay. In other words, bodhisattvas, their realizations will not actually develop, as swift as it should be. That's when that happens.
맞아. 제시 장주스 같은 소리래. 아니면 방사와 있었다. ranjul nyumo wangi lesa sabo yamare.
So the bodhisattvas, the Arya bodhisattvas, in other words, Arya bodhisattvas will not actually accumulate negative karma derived from uh, reflections or the defilements.
단디 자주 사바게 내가제 단디 말아서 나네 가르치여스나 말아서 이네야 대단 토마 나주 주연도 언제도 나네 진로도 내가 집에 거래야 시엘이야 문지비 주랑 대 가르쳐버려 간도도 방구야 많은 마주 이네야 내가 사사 지야 저기 좀 버려 소소기 제단지 만들기 왕기 있는 바로 보 라넬이야 가르쳐버려 지 컨트롤 나야라서 근데 제송이나 아니 바로 보데 주가 계자 정도고요래 바로 보데 랭이 바사고요래 자주 선발에 때에 랭이 바사 나기도 사고요 말해 간다 그 텔파비 랭이 바사고요래 텔파비 계자 정도고 건데 지원돼 제가 드네이드 바로 그 계산 좋아하다 바로 그 랭이 바사야 돼 야라니 제가 예소가 라니네 니 봐요 뭐래
So then here, although the verse actually talks about how the bodhisattvas should behave, but it actually, also relevant to us as ordinary beings, as practitioners. We have to be very careful when we are in a society, interacting with other people, other individuals, making sure that you are being mindful, one is being mindful of one's own actions of the body and speech, so that one's body and speech, actions of the one's body and speech doesn't become a condition for other person generate negative thoughts and emotions towards oneself. So if that happens, not only that individual who actually generates negative thoughts and emotions towards oneself accumulate negative karma, but also we, as a conditioner, we actually become a condition or the cause of the other individual, generate negative thoughts and emotions towards oneself. One will also accumulate negative karma. So this verse, not only the bodhisattvas, but mainly towards us, we have to be very careful, be mindful of our actions of the body and speech when we are interacting with ordinary people.
tene 진 nyuma ju jima ji do khabore so da nyuma ju de bichane jima ji khabore ane mishi be wangi tuma ju ko sa na ji mishi be wangi ya jola me de pata ma ju ya bo me de yu sa jire yene da so do ni kantu ji do ji ni yene ke ja shi wa ne ya ane man jang bu ta ne tse de bu ta ne na ya ane na ju te be kale ji ba ge dong na ju zo ben zo dan 때문에 아니 이게 맞아 바로 그 예도 뭐지 나저 있네 바로 그 예도 뭐지 된도야다 나가 맞아 있네 바로 그 예도 뭐지 돈이 맞지야 엔도 나가 고롱도 아니네 아 사만나가 다봐 제 펜세로지 된다고 권이라니 엔소소게 고송기 잡아지 된다고 돈이 나고에 기침이 있어요
Certainly, we as ordinary beings, we may not be able to engage in our actions of the body and speech that is perfect to everyone. Although we may not engage in negative thoughts and negative actions of body and speech deliberately to harm others, but unknowingly or misknowingly, we may engage in those kind of negative. Our actions may become offensive or something that may become harmful to others. However, from one's own side, as a practitioner, we always be careful, be mindful of one's actions of the body, speech, and mind. When we are speaking, be mindful that you won't speak to someone. The words that has been expressed doesn't really become offensive or something that is harsh towards others. And even one's own facial expression when one is speaking to others, sometimes, we may become little, wrathful of or something, and then we change our facial expression that makes it so uncomfortable to other beings. And this should not be done. So this shouldn't be doing as a practitioners. We should be very careful with all of this. And so if possible, when we are speaking with someone, even when we are having some kind of conversation that is not related to dharma, but we should always have a positive motivations. And when one speak to others, once the words that has been expressed is actually, induced by positive motivations. In other words, all our actions of the body, speech, and mind must be conditioned by the positive motivation.
하여튼 남이 쇼나니 나기 콜라드 키친부 송고요리 키친부리다리 이나야 주주쟁이 디비차네야 마비 마주다 르기 나주 대단히 주니 키친부 송도 드네도 어서 대소이네 소소 라네 같이도 남고에 키친말이죠.
Yes, the motivation is a key factor here. Having a positive motivation as a practitioner is a key factor, but also it's also crucial to have a positive actions of the body and speech, that one's speech doesn't become harsh and something, it doesn't become offensive to others, and one's physical, one's physical expression, in other words, or gestures should not become disrespectful to others.
제가 말도 메다바 둘이 집에 그래야 되니 지동 나주 야보데 아는 증장보 많이 뭐 되는 게 집에 그래야 소소이네 생을 가서 용도 하자 바로 얘도 통도 아니 얘도 통도 그래 대단 디바지 되고 찍으러 한다단 디바지네 뭐 존나는 바로 보고 잠비고 유대도 라니를 토야게 과거 여러와 제가다 다른 거를 쉬어야 되지 형 전이잖니 레게 봐서야 단테 찐지야 되는게 니바 유한지 시바래데 아니야 제가 장주스 봐서 뭐 조지 드자 신춘 되니 소소하게 제가도 있는 친구도 소리 이해는 봐 아니 가서 배야서래 근데 얘도 줘야지 제가 이해는 봐 아니 나도 내 돼야 돼 뭐도 생사래.
So just take an example of ourselves. When we come across with someone, even someone whom we do not know, or someone who is unknown on the stage, but when we interact with this individual gives us a positive response, such as speaking politely, with the respectful physical gestures, then we become happy with it, right? So just as we ourselves become happy and pleased with when we come across with that kind of individuals, and we should also do the same to other beings.
많이 말린 잡고지야 당 도면 나줘야 거대야 나를 살로 잡고지야 저데 주미 지미는 중요하지 말아 봐 거기다 제일 때니 용고 그러와 근데 이제 저 주단 제일 때니 용하나 근데 저 요거 주단 제일 저 시고 그러와 저 근데 이제 말로서 미시병원 동안 주고 거서 미시병원게 하는 말로서 노트지 쇼고 그래 근데 이제 뭐도 저 시면 제거해서 기준 거지 Then you mama doing you go. So Julie, you must which will be angi, and the young guy hit the char, Kai the down, Kai Yawa, the Dawangi, and the young Chichari down, the Nagatoni, young, not a Chichu over. And then Bami be angi, young, Nami cigarette, Bami Tani, can you manage, the Dawangi, not to Chichu over just the name, Manso, Meshiba Shiba Chiatan. Tanashiki soso ju nyumo nur tanya tang, chona nyumo tenye pangto ya kumbyo cheya, ane pame da nayo wangi masoma kadyo ina tere ya che treba da xie tenye, tona kichimo naya te pe kichimo rinduwa.
So, speaking with someone, making sure that you are using the words that are suitable, and it's not something that's the words that you are being expressed is not harsh. And at the same time, one should also have a positive physical gesture. So when it comes to maintaining this positive speech, positive motivation, positive physical appearance, it's not something that coming into being without any causes and conditions. It requires the causes and conditions, right? So, so therefore, we should know what are the causes and conditions that give rise to our positive actions of the body, speech, and mind. Because without, we are normally, when disrespectful speech or contemptuous attitude comes because of not knowing the condition of how to engage in the positive actions of the body, speech, and mind without not knowing the conditions of that. So therefore, in the text it says, not knowing is one of the door of downfalls. And then also the delusion is, or the affliction is one of the door for our downfalls. So therefore, and then also the recklessness is also one of the downfalls. So therefore, the cause of maintaining this positive actions of the body and speech, mind, body, speech, and mind is the mindfulness and introspections, or the meta awareness.
소소 고송 저 간다 제거였는데나 소소게 야야 공부에 계신 거래. 제가 공부스디 선보 제가 공부를 제거도 조건이래. 소되나 다자의 제거 공기면에 된다 유지래. 다 지금도 마왕게다 뭐는 제거 조건이래. 제가 담도 제거야 되나 소소게 류기 난주 동난주 간다 땡도 소소 난주 소소 제가제 좋아 지시는 얘도 뭐하지 땡도 얘는 얘도 뭐하지 땡도 대야야 제가제 안소가 마가 마주 때 남의 마다지 소소 마는 마주 줘대 얘는 병에 들인도 얘는 병에 지시도 에 도서대 간다는 소소도 야야 제가제 안소도 상로가 나네 가를 거고도 야와지 거고도 도와지 거고도 소는 듣고 와는 때니 얘는 병도 내고도 랑 병도 내고도 랑 병이 상로지 거고도 랑 능이 상로지 거고도 또 소소도 시다다 제가제들이야 제공서월에 소소기 류근 가르쳐다 나죠 간다 때문도 된다 제가제야 마그 마주를 제가제 소소시비 개찰에 신주제야 소소가 상로 간다 거고 또 다양 상로도 스케리 소소 상로다 소소도 고소는 제가제 그래 제공서 때나 공양야 저 공양야 진짜는 소도 리비차서 메트니 근데 주저지야 나자시야 메시지야 근데 리비차서 가도 방마도 있는 강도 지도는 로도 따니 다른 바 내비를 줘도 봐 도와지 메시지가 보여서
So these positive actions of the body and speech cannot be adapted overnight. It requires trainings or the practice, in other words, and meditation. So this requires analytical meditations rather than single-pointed meditation. And how do we begin with engaging in this analytical meditation with regard to this actions of the body, speech, and mind? One should always remember and analyze what kind of physical expression that one is actually having when one is interacting with someone, or even if one has actually completed one's interaction with this individual, and when you come out, when you go somewhere else, and then you remember that your interaction with this person, what kind of physical interaction or gestures that you may have with this individual. So this is how you should analyze. And similarly, when you are speaking to someone, and it is also important to analyze that the words that you have been spoken towards individual, is that the right, word that I'm actually speaking to that person, and it is not right or wrong. So you should always analyze that. And also then analyze one's own motivation, which is the most important part when one is interacting with somebody. When you are saying something, when you're interacting, your physical appearance or the gestures, all of those actions are actually coming from your own motivation. So making sure that you also analyze your motivations, what kind of motivation that one actually generated. And so this is how we should always analyze one's own actions of the body, speech, and mind. Because just practicing for a couple of minutes or just one day a week will not actually change our actions of our body, speech, and mind, as we are very familiar with this kind of action from the beginningless time up until now. So it requires a rigorous and consistent practice. So just making sure that when you are speaking to someone, the words that have been spoken, expressed, is that words actually becoming harmful, or it's becoming beneficial to oneself or others, or your motivation that you have to speak to other person is something that is harmful or something that is beneficial for oneself and that of others. So when you find out all that after the final analysis, then if you find there's something that you have done or not, it is inappropriate, you should always make a pledge or commitment that you will never engage in such actions of the body, speech, and mind in the future. So although we may not be able to uproot these actions of the negative actions of the body, speech, and mind at this time, as a result of one's continuous and consistent practice, one will able to reduce the intensity of those negative actions of the body, speech, and mind. And then eventually, as a result of one's consistent practice, one will be able to uproot those negative actions of the body, speech, and mind.
지난 소설한 얘기 신주진의 주연소대 야고지 빵마도이나 고송이 장하게 버서도 빵마도이나 당한지 마도 아니 얘기인들이야 진지 태우고 그랬더니 뭐 봤어요 그래 장하게 봤대 근데 뭐 봤어요 그래 바로 보라니래야 마가와 자그리라 마테바 주노래 마테바 주노이나 어느 라진닝게 랭게 바사야다지 어느 바로 보 라니 다타른 좀 좋아 근데 이제 랑기 잠비 요된디 아니 시안바 빼야기 라야기 과가디야 라노로 근데 이제 고촌이 자르시라요도
So it is as a result of one's practice, then when one comes across with an individual or when one, in other words, so it's just this practice, whatever the practices we may have done at home or by yourself or a group, and this practice must be arise in the sense of when, in other words, when one is going through a vicissitude of one's own mind. Otherwise, you may have done some kind of practice at home or some places or by yourself or in a group. But when we go out of that place of your practice, when the condition arises, the adversity of some adversity condition, or in other words, negative circumstances, then one immediately forget what the practice that one has done earlier. Then that is not really right, because you are very purpose of practicing meditating and training your mind is when you come across with those conditions. And that is the time that one must use one's practice.
다 얘네 돼야 돼요. 얘 가르쳐 버려. 고아다는 좀 동안에 야다니. 아니 더 다이죠. 고도야. 걔들이 당하지래. 너 누나 따와도 줘봐니래. 따와딘 주가 들어가면 봤어요. 아나 대신이 더 자주 세다. 싫어. 아니 남의 더 싫어. 어떤 일이다 남의 주인 보는 거지. 아나 따와딘 주가 들어가면 봐. 아나 대신이 어디서다 이 시간에 가르쳐를 빼야스나 얘네 라야스나다 대신이다. 어떤 애들이 자 대다 대대 대신이 대 수요줄까지 제도이나 존나 타이치면 거 맞으냐 답을 도도야 되는 거로 되는 거이나 아니 내가 주는 거로 어떻게 되게 뭐에 다 좋아하는 것 같아.
So all this practice that we're doing is the practice that our objective of this practice of Dharma, in other words, particularly the mind of Dharma, is to benefit other beings. And one's practice is dedicated towards liberating sentient beings from samsara or establishing all sentient beings to the state of enlightenment. And this just mere having a wishful thinking or some kind of prayer, saying some prayers will not make us become a liberator of other sentient beings, let alone to liberate other beings. One may not be able to liberate oneself as well. So therefore, one's practice must be based on the perfect conduct and perfect view, or one's practice must be based on the cultivation of method aspect and the wisdom aspect. And just as one's practice is based on this method aspect and wisdom aspect, one should become a rather condition for giving rise to condition for making others who would actually be able to follow your practice of method aspect and wisdom aspect, so that that individual who follows you may be able to attain liberation from samsara or complete state of enlightenment.
제가 대인도 쇼나는 동안 되는 두대 나빠시스 당에 강에서 제 마대주 되는 두대 나빠시스 되는 두대 나빠시스 대대로 고성을 저하는 것도 저때 소소하게 되네 별로지도 드니 그래서 되는 되는 저하는 게 나빠서 이제 빵고 그래서 군조들이 가서 군조 지원하는 했더니 아직도 손도 와서 또 그래.
So therefore it says one should practice to eliminate all these negative actions of the body, speech, and mind. Something that is important, taught by the great beings of the past. And when you look at any kind of teachings, the authentic teachings of the Dharma, and those are the advices that are given. The importance of abandoning the actions of the body, negative actions of the body, speech, and mind.
다들 맞아야지. 되네 되는 거는 되지. 되네 다른 소한테 메다 걸어 서 제비 스트가니 되지. 쇼아이나 단 데미지데 센데 뱀이 젠데 봐야 돼. 되게 공원을 쉬어도 또 가서 쉬어. 이제는 봐서 맞아야 돼. 다들 되네 다른 소한테 메다 걸어 서 제비 봐서도 상고 센데 뱀이 되네 젠카까지 맞대. 소소 가는 때 거요 봐서 어때래 그래서 이제는 다른 소한테 다른데만 다를 소야기 거기 아니 송도와 제가 다른 소하나 매당 걸어서 제비 그게 너무 되게 된 거예요 매당 걸어서 소련나래다 매대 봤다 아니 가지 다 매대 봤더라 아니 나시게 쇼노야지 주도 그래다 tendu imeda navici mes judo tendo ane tenaki mechi ya nata yombe kane tenaki mechi ninu sundu zavan.
So let's move to this next verse, the verse 13, first two lines of the verse 13. This is protecting the body by means of medicine, clothes, and so on. So this actually talks about how we can protect our body, the present body that we have, by relying upon the medicine, clothing, fooding, shelter, and so on, in other words. So when it comes to the means of medicine, there are two kinds of medicines. Medicine that needs to be medicine that one needs to rely upon all the time, in other words, or all time, or every time. And that's a medicine that we should rely upon, the reliance of the medicine when we need it, such as when one is undergoing sickness and so forth. So there are two kinds of medicine: the medicine that is to be used at all time, in other words, very consistently, and there's another medicine that we needed to use when it is needed, or when one is undergoing some kind of sickness.
제가 되게 자외긴 디바데 라디오 디바 나라야. 어느 조인데 저주는 막 빼자는 정도. 제가 루베시가라 그런 나는다게 빈루제 내도 준주인의 송사도 저주는 될 송바데 다나인데 대무기드네 라디오인의 저 저주는 되는 쇼니. 근데 저주는 저 제가가 저의 시작이 송도. 제가 tendu me sadi na yujudo namazo lutsoya jita kala sayadre tele tendu me tendu anso lutsoya jita sayagi me kala tele ane ka so na za yubi kane am member te me sayajuro te navi te me saya whatever ni
So this verse actually, the verse is actually given advice towards the monastic individuals, or in other words, the bhikshus and bhikshunis, as Shantideva himself was a bhikshu who is one of the pandit of Nalanda universities, and the teachings that he has given, the Siksa Samuccaya, the followers or the disciples of at that time are all bhikshus. And similarly, guide to the Bodhisattva of life, Bodhisattva avatar. So also when he gives the teachings, also all the followers of that teachings are the bhikshus. So therefore, it is mostly advice is directed towards the bhikshus and bhikshunis. And so here now the medicine that is to be relied upon all the time, which is referring to our daily food, our daily meals, which is a healthy diet. And then the medicine here, the medicine that is to be needed for some time, or when it is necessary, is referring to the actual medicine that we normally use when we are undergoing some kind of sicknesses.
The name you know, Sungsa Raju Imichani Mato Swing Bikare, Yang Dinani, Raju Mayin Batsoki, and Raju Sushi to Zodi, Nazla Majoa Dinamare. So the Raju Suwaine, Dinani, and the Raju Mayin Batsoki, Knowledge Chower. In a Raju knowledge, Samade, Chimato, Chopping by your Mate, Mamboje, Chower, Jazan, Tanay, the Raju Sumaji Resni.
Although this the particular verse is actually directed towards the bhikshus and bhikshunis, that doesn't mean that the lay person cannot follow this practice. Of course, there are certain Vinaya practices that is required only for the bhikshus and bhikshunis. That doesn't require certain practices, observations of vows, and so on. They're all, ordinary beings or the lay people. But there are many common practices which requires the practice that is common practices done by both bhikshus and non-bhikshus. So if you look at the teachings of the Guide to the Bodhisattva of Life, this chapter consists of 10, including the dedication chapter. All those chapters are mainly teachings on 6 professions. And this, although when Shantideva was expounding these teachings, the audience or the followers or the disciples are all bhikshus and bhikshunis. But this teachings is required not only for the bhikshus and bhikshunis, but it is for all beings who would like to achieve state of enlightenment. Those who have genuine desire or the aspiration to attain state of enlightenment or the state of liberation should follow this practice, the teachings of the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, following the practice of the six perfections.
단지반으로 몸본도 참말로는 조상거를 듣는 그게 이슈와이나 된다지 손도하다나 다 장주서 봐 서로다 저중소 선노는 배 자가리야 선노는 배 소선 요거 시라서 얘나 랑가 되는데 저거는 또 취해야 자상 대 다른 것도 가르나 매들니요 대도에면 내면 대도에면서 준도 소소를 줘야지 가라서야들 가게 들어와 저데 가라사비가야 근데 잡아매봐자데스 잡아매봐자데 잡아마이 깜바마이 셴바마이지 셴도는 자상도 르네버 조와탄 초가지위치 자데다 도도도도데 안 소소 나주 레주이난다 마이난다 소소 준을 르쳐야 가라사비가야 안 가라를 시버게 체리기 잡아지요 말에 아니 셴바지요 말에스.
So then here it says, when it comes to the food, the monks normally their foods are provided by the lay people by going to the different places for alms with their alms balls and so. And so when the food is offered, and when they're eating the food, making sure that the way they eat, when they're eating their foods, one should eat the food without any attachment. In it says, no attachment should be involved when one is eating food. So it's just completely towards, actually. The advice is towards the bhikshus and bhikshunis, but it's also relevant to all of us too. And so one's purpose of food is merely to sustain one's body, to strengthen one's body, and eating one's food, one's meal is just considering that as a medicine to sustain one's body. And this is the kind of motivation that one should have when one is eating food. One should not have an excessive attachment based on the taste of the food and based on the color of the food, based on the presentation of the food, because it may happen to us when we find that it's something that is so extraordinarily delicious, and then we have this comes up, oh, this is so good, and we have this attachment. So we shouldn't have that kind of. So actually, of course, this is the advice is given to the bhikshus, but it's also relevant to us too.
근데 이제 소소자야 칼라래 시በ게 차바지 이바지와이나 안 대용이 들려 코루지야겠더니 뒤서 먹고 땅구야 땅 아니 대용이 시야래 지바게 먼저 맨날 요때 양아서 같은데 뭐 뭐지 이용을 했는데 이제 뒤서 빵거래스.
Because if you have excessive, attachment towards one's food and so on, then the bhikshus will take a lot of time to prepare the food, to make sure that foods are so good and so on. And then that actually take up their time, increases their attachment and so on. So therefore, should not have attachment towards one's food.
또 드니 가지 때인데 소소비 류디 유르보 내야던 조약이 어떤 레지 무지는 가라사고 해서.
The food is merely used to, as we mentioned earlier, to sustain one's body, to protect one's body.
류 유르보 내야던 조약 때문에 소소기 아니 레상보지 아니 야보지 조약이 제대로 해서.
To sustain one's body as long as possible, again, here is to create more positive karma, just by sustaining one's body and having a long life and not paying attention to creating positive karma, then it's not very useful.
저 정도 동의지나 책가들이네 야레스.
If someone who is actually engaging in a positive actions, virtue sessions, then this individual have a long life. It should have long life. Better to have a long life.
책린다 말이지야도 저 류투에레스.
Whether you have a long life or not, it depends on your body, the condition of your body.
류도 보면은 류되게 시비기 땡제 정말 시비기 땡제 맞나? 아니 류세니 땡데 류치는 신도하지 드레스.
If one's body condition is not very good, then this will not be one's body will not be able to become a basis for our consciousness. And if our body doesn't become a suitable basis for consciousness, then the consciousness body will be departed. The consciousness will depart from this body, and this is what we call the death will occur. Occurrence of the death, sorry.
저도 드네인데 류데 이름이야도 조약 저도네 저 대안의 가랄 때 되레스 가지.
So therefore, one's purpose of eating food is to sustain one's life of one's body, in other words.
류조약 저도 가라자 그러면도 이집이 저 가랄이야 자기 집에 말했어.
Our very purpose of eating our food is to sustain our body, strengthen our body, but should not have attachment to the food that one is eating.
단단하네요. 가라자 땅고래요. 단대지당 모두 자서 뭐 중이지 시제 거래 주인 지미 주기가 말이라. 다들 가라자 땅들 하전 냠마다 하전 류지하면 좋아서 하전 먹어야 돼. 하전 먹어야 돼.
So once the food, one should not overeat the food. And again, one shouldn't, limit the food and it's not enough. But it should be in the middle way, in other words. Should not overeat, or again, one should not become one should not eat it too less. It is something that is not really enough for oneself. One shouldn't do that too.
가디 하전 누누다 하전 니바메가 들어가이나 어서 류조가 차이나 아니 게 자도 봐라 아니 가는 거래.
One is unable to have enough food, then suddenly this will decline your strength of your body. By declining your strength of your body, well, then you're actually shortening your life. That will actually take your opportunity of engaging in actions of the virtue.
하전 마을에서 들어가이나 아니 류 저것도 와자다 아니 년래야 근데 정말래 레야게 아니 전체를 했으니요 교화중에 기비차니
Then suddenly if you overeat again, then this is not good for one's health. That we all know about that. And then also it will also become an obstacle for one's practice, because this will create a heaviness of your body, and also gives you some experiences of dullness.
너드나 가지드사니 또 아니 기회 줘야 아니 자주 두어 지치도 문이 사그래서
When in brief, when you eat by dedicating your eating towards achievement of virtuous conduct or achievements of virtue or the merits.
어떤에 무슨 주도 대학 매드 가지들이 아무도 말도 갈상 땅을 쇼게니 본다 바로 칼라 사게네 자통에나 뭐고지 나고요. 근데 제대로 소소 코로나 가르거나 땅에 자통 칼라도 사이드 좀 류초야지도 이 류도 여보리 천나 마세르 부디 그래 마세르 부쳐서 내가 저당에 셴베기 자 강토도 주고 이해서 대지미 소소 코로나 아저들 레지 돈에는 소소 카디로 돈에 여보요레스.
So we all eat our food beginning from morning, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Teas, not only that, also we drink teas and so on. So when we are doing that, it's important to have motivations of sustaining one's body. In other words, think about the purpose of my very purpose of eating food. It's just not to experience the the goodness of the taste of the food, but rather to sustain one's body. By sustaining one's body, one will be able to sustain one's uh, one's life, and able to sustain one's life, one will be able to do something that is good for others.
这等待有的说说，在科技做的，现在浪的上一难着，说说各类型的中华一难着，刚大讲说说长把给各类结果，他让把真的中华就蔓延吧，那让你这边时间忙不这个年的，中华因素长，那这样把个家什么主要这样，那让你这边时间统计，那呀，那家什么就主要用说，但这就起到影响的，老多是把加减的。
So whenever we eat food or drink tea and so on, the important for us to think about is all sentient beings, because the food that we are eating is not just one individual actually. Become a condition for giving rise to this food. The food that we are having, it involves numerous people. Even let's think about the bag of tea. If you think about the bag of tea that we are having, how many people that may have involved to become this as a tea, they're ready for us to drink, actually, ready for us to have. So when you're eating and drinking, again, think about all other sentient beings and dedicate your merits towards them. That my food and whatever the food that I'm consuming is all because of the kindness of other beings. It is their hardships and their kindness. I'm able to, use this food. I'm able to eat this food. So therefore, it is worthwhile to dedicate one's merits and virtue towards all other beings. Have questions? We'll take questions. Any questions?
I'll offer something up. I understand the reasoning and the value of being mindful of one's conduct and one's speech so one doesn't offend others. But there are some people who tend to be ill-tempered or like to quarrel. And if you're going to interact with them, even if you're careful, you're likely to get angry and upset. So I understand that you can protect your own demeanor, but just by interacting with them at all, which may be difficult to avoid, they are creating negative karma. So what advice does Geshe-la have about this?
거가 야신 없이 차대고 여러 얘네다 그래 가고 여러 문제래 얘네다 그 머루니네 페버두마도 있네 아니 들에 뇌에 말아지니까 남의 없이 다잖아 나도네 여보러 봐 좋아 바로 복선에 받지 오는 들에 제 뇌에 페버두야 돼 양 그래 가버리지 좋아 아니 페버두마네 뇌발 뇌에 말아지 근데 그런 가르치는 시간이 이제 서서 그때 왜 요도했지 아니 남의 일단 근데 요도했잖아 근데 왜 요도네요 그 반년에 지금 왜 주네 약을 봐 다도 저한테 주니로 두고기다 이제 나한테 내 그래서 아니 생각하고야 제가 따라한다고 이렇게 좀 그래
It is really difficult. That's true, That's why out of many practices, the practice of patience is something that is really difficult. So, it is, when we say that we should practice patience when you come across with this kind of people, when you are saying it is easy to tell someone to be patient, practice patience. But when it actually happens, and it's not that easy, as ordinary beings, we all have this. The best thing, if one is unable to practice patience, if you think that is happening, then we should take a chance to ignore, not answering the question. Because the best thing is, when you come across with this kind of individual, if one is a good practitioner, then right away, instead of looking at that, instead of making a story out of what he or she is saying, what he or she is acting, one should take this as, this is my opportunity. Here you go. I'm here with this person. It's my opportunity to perfect my patience. I'm a practitioner. I'm in the process of perfecting my patience. I must do whatever I could to practice, perfect my patience. So this is a wonderful opportunity that I'm having. So if you have this kind of motivation right there, then regardless of what others say to you, what others act towards yourself, the others' actions and behaviors will not really affect us, will not have a negative effect. So if one is able to do that, then this is really good. It's a good practice. But if not, then the good solution is to ignore. Any questions?
아니 주는 데요 보여줘래 다저도 고유고 제반도와 모두 고부터 나나 있나 거기서 칸마 생각하는 칸 셔잖아 때려야지 꼴 정도니 된다게 되게 영화로 다고 저한테 담을 칸은 담을 시 거기서 좀 지어라 봐 저는 고유하게요 그거래야지 계제시나 저도 맞는 때려 고아로 돌리는 거 뭐뭐 포도로 했더니 것도 와 저한테는 이제 다 얘기야 지금 계속 가르치거든 소속이 남도 잡으시면도 소속입니다 소속으로 바로 그 가르치는 거 있는 거 지금 문제도 고용하게 되는도 고용하게 나면 계제시하면 너무 많잖아 아니 남의 집에 들어와 지셔야 되는 담을 포도하다 고안을 내고 용도 다 소속인들은 지금 남도 잡으셔야 되지만도 바로 보고 이는 이 무슨 이봐 많이는 많이 있는 것 같은 아니 그때 계제시하고 그때 이사에서 소속이 되지 저번에 나도 못 되어줘. 근데 쟤나 소속강에 못 되때 나도 싫어져요.
So in one thing, if one analyzes very carefully, there's a choice with us when we come across with this book. We choose to act accordingly with this individual, or either we choose not to act accordingly, but rather to refrain oneself from even having a motivation of retaliating or having a motivation of acting accordingly. So that's a choice, but we're not choosing the right one normally. But that doesn't happen to every one of us. As ordinary beings, it doesn't happen to us. But we should always remind ourselves that when someone says something and we immediately make a story out of it, we, intensify. Even if that person said, if he or she doesn't mean to say that, but we make it more. That we have a tendency of doing that, and we intensify the word that is spoken by the person, and we interpret ourselves and take a different kind of meaning, and then we keep thinking of that, and then adding one after another. And even if you go somewhere without, if you have done arguing with this person, even if you go by yourself at home and isolated yourself, you still have this in you. And that makes you very uncomfortable and unhappy. But instead of that, whatever that person may have said, as a practitioner, what we should do is to not make a story out of it. And that's the best thing. Just let it go. And as it said in some text, it says, when someone, says harsh words, consider that word is a ear or the wind passing by your ear. It doesn't stay in your ear, it's just passing by your ear, but it doesn't stay in you. Because we are actually, choosing ourselves to be with that, negative energy that we had at that person, with that individual. We choose not to let go of it. That is what is happening with us.
제가 이해를 해보고요. 내가 해보고 이제 주제부터 해보고는 야외로 주제 메뉴 해보고 클릭하고래. 제가 바로 보고라니 이제 특수라고 했는데 아주 좋게 된 거였나 간다. 저항을 말이지 상고에나 소소문이 들어가서 보고 제가 가서 왔다마다 근데 다 바로 보더니 유명한 게래. 미시병한 게래서 근데 내가 왕게 제 니지 그냥한테 ene zeba konto ya tende konto ya tama juere mata ye jude sana makana ene para ba tsun ne ba jong dina sa ba ne ne ba mo ko mo ka wa wa cha jude de sa para ba ta so so ni je yi ba so so le me ba no shi ko me shi be mo yi ba ne mo mo ge ene cha wa yo go ba le ni je sa tene je sa na ene so so lo le ya ji ya me de ga yu ma lo ma shi ga ji mo do.
So when we come across with, the individual who is ill-tempered, or like who want to quarrel all the time, and who have this kind of attitude, then, as we mentioned earlier, that the individual, as we find in the 8 verses of training the mind, is you take this person as one's master of perfect one practice of patience. Now here again, when we talk about practicing patience, one should understand the reason why you are practicing the patience. Why I should practice patience even though this individual is doing something bad to me? You should know why. If you understand the reason, then you will have not much difficulty of practicing patience. Because we normally, when we text, I'm being patient, but inside there's a burning. You just go being patient. You just with that's not really patience. Patience must come from within. And when someone says one's mind should not be distracted. And that distraction will not come in, distraction will not, take place our mind when one understands the reason of one's practice. Because when someone with the ill temper, and like someone who would like to argue and who would like to talk something bad about others and so on, we should think about that person is doing that because he or he is completely remaining under the power of ignorance. And then when you have this, or he doesn't know that he's not knowing that this and that, if one is able to reflect one's mind upon that, then instead of having a the motivation of retaliating, you will, in fact, you will have compassion for that person by knowing the situation of that individual, why he or she is actually having this kind of, ill-tempered, and who would like to do something that is, who talk bad about others, and so on.
Kind of a question.
Yes.
Regarding people in general, I mean ordinary people I'm talking about, those who are seeking the goal of being a better human being and enlightened or whatever, but they don't really honestly want to do the work. They do their work, whatever that is, in their life, but the real spiritual work that needed to be done, they don't really do. And they want it to be as easy, as simple as possible, cheap as possible, fast as possible. And as Holiness said, you gotta do the work yourself. You can't. And I feel sometimes those people are really frustrating people to me. And not only that, but I also find that that those who basically they either, if they can't do it, I mean, if they can't do it, they're helpless or whatever. Then okay, your compassion can go out to them, because they can, but I almost feel like, how can you help anyone until you've been able to do something yourself first? I mean,
Absolutely.
And that's, I think that's a dilemma with me, with people and in situations, because it's always a challenge. People are before you, you either are consciously mindful or you're not, and you either catch yourself or you don't catch yourself, and you're always trying to get there, but it's a hard road to hoe, Anyway.
Okay. From the other situation,这个没谁，这个人大大行动，那可能就是那么这能见在美国嘛，去用在美国嘛，这个研究在美国但是也个学习嘛，刚才这米也个是才这。教几个月不干去这个，他们信不信的用过我是这个，这对跟着呢，在咱们的这说说你们也不经验是说了当然，那你们也不去也记录简单的也去，去你们我呢去把这么多些这个刚教这也不吃呀，不知道呀，们他不也不吃是的话，他去包括多的是没路，他的也不吃是的，刚教吃也去，第二样去。那是加了么子呢？加了也不是个个不这个也光贴不是不用这个钱，那个个说的是，那么也的工作工作呢就要去把它弄到那度，就是就刚刚开，那得要去上当的都加上，现在了他，这永远有嘛，我是看的，现在的去，对，刚才嘛也得说通过读书的跟那边的。 인주 미야가 시부에 자가 지긴 시제 된데 공부기 외고 가시 제리야 야가 제단도 무슨 피해지 돼야지 강교교직 써야지 강교교야지 준비 해야지 민대로 미야시를 따뜻히 쇼로 봤어 근데 또 웃어야 실례셔 갖고 근데 최셔 이 기사 때문에 투자를 걸나요
Rēdā ngā dzō pēk tāpē chū yorwa, rīwā sāngsā nī chō, tādū dūsān chē sē yādē, kā tē pē dē, tē sār jānā dē wō rē. Pēnā ngā dzō chū yāpō chē gīng, sē yorwa, chū yāpō chē gīng, sē chē tāng, anā rāni yōpō yāpō chā tuwa chē gīng sē yorwa. Chē tāng, tēndē chē tāng ngā kōnō dē yāpō tuwa, chū yāpō chū tuwa gīng, 요번에 야구 차도 저기 있어야지. 야구도와. 이내양 소도 야구이 차봤다. 대한 저번 야구 차봤지와나 근데 용도야 그때 주제는 고두고로 봐. 주제도 두고래. 야구 차와라 주제도 두카워요. 야구 차고 주제도 두카워요. 두고 차고 주제도 둘라와야 다고. 봐. 근데 이제 대는 야구 저번 차 주제도 들려줘도 카와요. 두번 저거 참 주제 둘러와요. 제가 내내서 대형으로 지하고 없어서 나 야고 지어도 야고 지어도 돼. 야고 지하고 주제는 안 떴어. 루카고 요사한테 하고 그래. 저거 야고 차 지어고 상하나 저거 야고 차와라 주제 되내지라고 요사. 그래서 그 저거 내서 차선 하고나 안 소소리야. 지금 버스터 번호 있다. 거세네 강에 되는 거 말해. 그럼 이나서도 걸리디자 야고야 걸리디자 걸리지니 리라모지 메테 걸리 주주부지다 때 야고지나마데 리라모지 메서 텐데시 다고이나 고 부정을 무역에 상로고 돈이 아니 걸리지 저용도 걸려 소소리야 대가 강에 매봐 아니 문이 소소 무역 야고 차도 나 얘기 아니 비에 준비 퇴영아 유마요로 와 근데 이상하나 어때 얘 야고진도 되게 주제는 그런데 야고지 상담 맡아나네 나서는 걸리지 무역 상은 그것도 아니 세미지 해야 되죠.
So it's good that if someone who would like to become a better person and who have this kind of motivation. But then just having motivation and wanting to become a better person alone will not, become the person better. But that requires causes and conditions. And a person would become a better person without any causes and conditions will not happen. And particularly when someone wants to become a better person as soon as possible, as cheap as possible, then think about the causes, what we need, what kind of causes and conditions that we need to become to become a better person right away, overnight. We wanted to, who doesn't want to become, as a practitioner, who doesn't want to become an enlightened being? If it's able to become enlightened overnight, then we all want to become enlightened being overnight. But what is lacking for us is we're not finding the right causes and conditions that makes us enlightened being. So we have to think about this. When we wanted to practice and wanted to become a better person, what kind of causes and conditions that is needed for us to become a better person? That is what we really need to think about. Even if someone who really wanted to become a good person or a better person as soon as possible, then that requires even more, practices to become to achieve this goal. Without practicing, meditating for the practitioner, the realization is not possible. We need to put in effort to become a better person. And to become a better person, in other words, who is completely free from sufferings and free from delusions requires a lot of practices. It is completely not possible for a person to become a better overnight. So it requires a lot of causes and conditions. So we should understand what kind of causes and condition that one need to accumulate to become a better person, and then pursue, to accumulate those causes and conditions. In other words, the rigorous practice, consistent practice is very, very important.
So, in this question, and in the great answer, me of little mind, I remember teaching on His Holiness, and it was a Jakarta tale.
Mhm.
And he was telling this, and then he told a story about how a monk attained enlightenment, low up here, but very strong here, and he would sweep the floor of the temple and say his prayers.
Mhm.
And that was considered a great practice because it was what he could do. So is there a conflict in here? Do you see my question?
The kunji ni kerok sunjo na ya.
음,
The teacher come this. The kerok na. Do you want to? Mati chite kisla pinching go de. Chidane koranji korsore ni chinyamle shukshim mebe ngale yanko pe. Ti kisla chingo de rumdi ko di insar pe sindina. Te ko kendren ya shepi shije pe na. Chi gechaich. Ti yoba
파울란초.
파브라고 좀 어디 라고 그러고. 근데 개론 쇼레스들이 그디 제베는 거 콜이야 미시 리보게요 말에 콜이 유엔데는 게요 말에 코 산제로 봤어. 디제비 디테스 텔이야 견주테스 해서 비도스고. 뭐든지 그게 뭐 사고야 단텐데 뭐 무시하고 지지 이렇게 리치겐데 산제로 데텔테스 견주요 해서 그래서 어딘데 시
맨날 요 말해. 다 반다 센들 산지게 지바이나야 대 주사도 지방은 뭐보네 주니 안도 산지고로 그 주제 말해 봐. 그럼 마을하다 때네 아니 누구고 많이 그랬어 그래. 이는 센데 장박에 주사도 산지바 말해. 지방은 뭐보네 주니 주사도니 산지바를 돈이 그런 데가 돈대로 같이 다면서 좋아서 아무 장주도 도지 봐서 같이 다면서 좋아서 탐구도 산지스 다 바지 들어가는 지는 근데 제가 들어오는 지는 타고 센터 산지에 여서 그래. 그래서 그래제 돈이 주사도나 가요 말이야.
So those beings, their accumulation of merit is not only their present lifetime alone. They have accumulated a tremendous amount of merits in their past life, went through a lot of hardships in practicing, but not only one lifetime, but a numerous lifetime. And then they are taken and rebirth as someone who is a lower mental capacity, but they do have the strong imprints that is accumulated from the past life, and that enables a such individual to gain state of enlightenment when the right condition is ripened. Just like Milarepa, although we see a Milarepa has gone through a lot of hardships by, his spiritual teacher Marpa, and people will normally think that all this accumulation merits and virtue that he had to gain state of enlightenment within the lifetime is done by this lifetime alone. This is not so. He has accumulated a tremendous amount of merits in his numerous lifetime, in the past lifetime. So Buddha himself gained state of enlightenment by accumulating merits of 3 countless great eons. And then, of course, it's according to Sutra system, but In the Montreal system, particularly the high Shiva Tantra, the system of high Shiva Tantra, there is a concept of possibility of gaining a state of enlightenment within one's lifetime, a brief lifetime.
So it's from an outer point of view, I'm not smart enough to judge somebody else's. I'm not that, let somebody else judge. But it is possible to misrepresent inside here. What you see is not evident. What's going on in here is what I heard, correct?
Me, quand je peux me dire, c'est me, c'est nam jeu dans le delta dans le milieu, ça va c'est tout mal, c'est la petite idée, c'est quoi. Me nam jeu dans le delta, ça va c'est tout mal.
다른 데 쉬어 쉬어가.
맞아,
다른 데서 더.
맞아.
주문만 주되는 다른 데는練習쳤어.
So we'll answer the question next
Later.
session. Next
Later.
session.
I'll think some more. Thank you.
Let's say the dedication prayers on page 23 and 24, continuing with auspicious wishes on page 28. Dagi jine sate saji yogi kewan kundu idan guru jesu nami
Amen.